big rage right now is the SpaceX IPO. We've been getting a lot of questions from clients about, what is it? Is it something that's attractive? Should we be getting involved in it? So we want to take the opportunity just for Matt and I to kind of discuss through. So Matt, our Chief Investment Officer, Matt, let me just start by saying or asking the question, what's your overall take on the SpaceX IPO? And is it something that, we should be interested in?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that as we're approaching the pricing date and trading supposed to happen approximately, and the dates can move approximately on June 12th, I think it is going to be an event that really is momentous within the markets for a couple of different reasons. First, you're seeing a lot of the underlying indices really change their rules as to whether or not they're going to include some of these mega IPO companies that are coming. So not only SpaceX, OpenAI, and Anthropic, given the total size and the market cap of these companies, those boards are rewriting the rules as what companies are even allowed to be into the indices. So I think if we see large players like the S&P Global, the Dow Jones, Russell 3000, a lot of these indices are making moves. I think it would be silly to ignore the size of these companies that are coming to market and really changing the way that IPOs are going to work.
So in your mind, Matt, I think a lot about the current valuation and the transaction that's imminently sitting in front of investors. I think a lot of people understand that the big money's been made already through private investments into SpaceX along the way. We've looked at some of them along the way. We never got ultimately very comfortable with kind of the structures of how they worked. And now we're sitting here looking at the IPO. The valuation, in my mind, is incredibly high. We've seen this before too from some, large, tech companies in the past going public and really pushing hard on valuation. What's your perspective on kind of that valuation coming through to investors? And should there be something in there that makes sense to think about, or is it we've got to kind of wait and see around how does that stock hit the market and start to trade?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I'm most interested in, this IPO is different for a lot of different reasons. It's one of the first times where the price is set. So Elon Musk and SpaceX has said that they're going to price this IPO at $135 a share. We'll see if that ends up happening. I suspect that it will. But the way I think about it, if you're setting a specific price and you're going out to a lot of institutional holders or a lot of institutional investors asking that price, if there's a lot left over for the retail investor, what that says to me is the institutional market participants are not interested at that price. So, in my opinion, I think it's better to wait and see what happens in the secondary markets, appreciating that there's going to be a lot of volatility around the name to start. But I think that the thing that's more important is how quickly this does get added to some of these indices, like we were speaking about before, because those are passive investments that need to purchase a certain percentage. So one of the things that a lot of people are writing about is that there's not going to be a lot of stock or what's called float out when these companies first IPO. A lot of the holders are still going to be those private investors that don't have full liquidity yet. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see that dynamic change and how much float and how much additional stock comes for sale in the future.
And I think that's a key point, Matt, for our clients and network to understand is if SpaceX gets added to, a benchmark index, well, a lot of the passive investment product that we own on the ETF side of things, they're naturally going to become investors in SpaceX to be able to replicate that benchmark that we like. So we'll end up with exposure to SpaceX and hopefully at the right time and place, and then we'll be kind of participating in that stock in the right proportion according to asset allocation. So I think that's an important part for kind of our demographic of clients to understand, knowing that we're not a company that is trying to pick stocks here and there, and play those types of environments, but more looking at it to say we think markets are efficient and we think that events like this are very important and that we'll participate them kind of in them along the way. Um, Last question, Matt, about just kind of SpaceX, the business, and even maybe looking forward to Anthropic and OpenAI in the future. Just give some thoughts around, do we see a shift in the landscape of the IPO market? Do we think that's waking back up again with some of these bigger names leading? Are there other kind of structural things happening in the market that you're seeing or hearing about or thinking about?
Yeah, I think a lot of the capital market professionals that I speak with have been saying that they do think that there's so much pent up demand for these three companies coming public that I don't want to say the floodgates will open by any means, but I think the appetite should absolutely pick up depending on how these trade. Again, there has never been one, let alone three companies of this size come to market. If these three companies come to market this calendar year, which is what it is shaping up to be right now, cumulatively they're going to be 5% of the S&P 500. So I know we've talked in the past about the concentration that's already inherent within the S&P 500, but as of right now, SpaceX looks like it's going to be it's already going to be in the top 10 of companies by market cap upon the IPO at that price. I think one of the things that we're going to be talking about going forward as well is just the AI trade is not just in these names. You're seeing it in the fixed income markets. You're seeing it in other public equities where there's so much capital being raised in both the fixed income and the equity markets related to AI. So people have joked that there's like the AI is everywhere trade. And
Hmm.
we are believers that you're starting to see that really trickle down through other companies. And that's what we're paying attention to most is when we think about portfolio construction.
Great. I like it, Matt. Thanks for the context today. As always, we're happy to answer questions and think about this on a more local level with our clients and networks. So thanks for your time, Matt.